So we're going to be reading Goosebumps 9 to 12, chapters 9 to 12. A few nights later, I heard the strange, frightening howls for the first time. My fever had gone up to 101 degrees and stayed there for a day. Then it went away, and then it came back. It's the swamp fever, I told my parents earlier that night. Pretty soon, I'm going to start acting crazy. You're already act crazy, Mom teased. She handed me a glass of orange juice. Drink, keep drinking. Drinking won't help the swamp fever, I insisted glumly. Taking the glass anyway. There's no cure for it. Mom tissed and tissed. Dad continued to read his science magazine. I had strange dreams that night, disturbing dreams. I was back in Vermont, running through the snow. Something was chasing me. I thought maybe it was the swamp hermit. I kept running and running. I was very cold. I was shivering in the dream. I turned back to see who was chasing me. There wasn't anyone there, and suddenly I was in the swamp. I was sinking in the peat fog. It gurgled all around me, green and thick, making these sick, sucking sounds. It sucked me down. The howls woke me up. I sat straight up in my bed, and I stared out the window at the nearly full moon. It floated right beyond the window, silvery and bright against the blue-black sky. Another long howl rose on the night air. I realized I was shaking all over. I was sweating. My pajama shirt stuck to my back. Gripping the covers with both hands, I listened hard. Another howl, the cry of an animal from the swamp. The cry sounded so close, right outside the window. Long, angry howls. I shoved down the covers and lowered my feet to the floor. I was still trembling, and my head throbbed as I stood up. I guess I still had a fever. Another long howl. I made my way to the hall on shaky legs. I had to find out if my parents had heard the howls too. Walking through the darkness, I bumped into a low table in the hall. I still wasn't used to this new house. My feet were cold as ice, but my head felt burning hot, as if it were on fire. Rubbing the knee I'd banged, I waited for my eyes to adjust to the darkness. Then I continued down the hall. My parents' room was just past the kitchen, in the back of the house. I was halfway across the kitchen when I stopped short. What was that sound? A scratching sound. My breath caught in my throat. I froze. My arms stiffed at my sides. I listened. There it was again. Over the pounding of my heart, I heard it. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Someone or something scratching at the kitchen door. Then another howl. Then another howl. So close, so terrifying, close. Scratch, scratch, scratch. What could it be? Some kind of animal just outside the house? Some kind of swamp animal howling and scratching at the door? I realized I'd been holding my breath a long while. I let it out in a whoosh, then sucked in another breath. I listened hard, straining to hear over the pounding of my heart. The refrigerator clicked on. The loud click nearly made me jump out of my skin. I grabbed the countertop. My hands were cold as my feet, cold and clammy. I listened. Scratch, scratch, scratch. I took a step toward the kitchen door. One step, then I stopped. A shudder of fear ran down my back. I realized I wasn't alone. Someone was there, breathing beside me in the dark kitchen. Number 10. I gasped. I was gripping the counter so hard, my hand ached. Who's there? I whispered. The kitchen light flashed on. Emily, I practically shouted her name in surprise and relief. Emily, did you hear the howls? She asked, speaking just above a whisper. Her blue eyes burned into mine. Yes, they woke me up, I said. They sound so angry. Like a cry of attack, Emily whispered. Why do you look so weird, Grady? Huh? Her question caught me off guard. Your face is all red, she said, and look at you. You're all shaky. I think my fever is back, I told her. Swamp fever, she murmured. examining me with her eyes. Maybe it's the swamp fever you were telling me about. I turned to the kitchen door. Do you hear the scratching sounds? I asked. Something was scratching at the back door. Yes, she whispered. She stared at the door. We both listened. Silence. You think one of the deers escaped? She asked. Taking a few steps toward the door, her arms crossed in front of her pink and white robe. Do you think a deer would scratch at the door? I asked. It was a silly question. We both burst out laughing. Maybe it wanted a glass of water, Emily exclaimed. We both laughed some more. Giddy laughter, nervous laughter. We both cut our laughter short at the same time and listened. Another howl rose up outside like the police siren. I saw Emily's eyes narrow in fear. It's a wolf, she cried in a hushed whisper. She raised a hand to her mouth. Only a wolf makes a sound like that, Grady. Emily, come on, I started to protest. No, I'm right, she insisted. It's a wolf's howl. Em, stop, I said, sinking onto the kitchen stool. There are no wolves in the Florida swamp. You can look in the guidebooks, or better yet, ask Mom and Dad. Wolves don't live in swamps. She started to argue, but a scratching at the door made her stop. Scratch, scratch, scratch. We both heard it. We both reacted with sharp gasps. What is that? I whispered. And then, reading her expression, I quickly added, don't say it's a wolf. I don't know, she replied. Both hands raised to her face. I recognized her look of panic. Let's get Mom and Dad. I grabbed a door handle. Let's just take a look, I said. I don't know where my sudden courage came from. Maybe it was a fever. But suddenly, I just wanted to solve the mystery. Who or what was scratching at the door? There is one good way to find out. Open the door and look outside. No, Grady, wait, Emily pleaded, but I waved away her protest. Then I turned the knob and pulled open the kitchen door. Chapter 11. A gust of hot, wet air rushed in through the open door. The chirp of the cicadas greeted my ears. Holding onto the door, I peered into the darkness of the backyard. Nothing. The nearly full moon, yellow as lemon, floated high in the sky. Then the wisp of the black clouds drifted over it. The cicadas stopped suddenly. All was quiet, too quiet. I squinted into the distance toward the blackness of the swamp. Nothing moved. Nothing made a sound. I waited for my eyes to adjust to the darkness. The moonlight sent a pale glow over the grass. In the far distance, I could see the black outline of slanting trees where the swamp began. Who or what had scratched at the door? Were they hiding in the distance now? Watching me, waiting for me to close the door so they could begin their frightening howls again? Grady, close the door. I could hear my sister's voice behind me. She sounded so frightened. Grady, do you see something? Do you? No, I told her, just the moon. I ventured out onto the back stoop. The air was hot and steamy, like the air in the bathroom after you've taken a hot shower. Grady, come back, close the door. Emily's voice was shrill and trembly. I grazed toward the deer pen. I could see their shadowy forms, still and silent. The hot wind rustled the grass. The cicadas began chirping again. Is anyone out here? I called, immediately feeling foolish. There was no one out here. Grady, shut the door now. I felt Emily's hand on my pajama sleeve. She tugged me back into the kitchen. I closed the door and locked it. My face felt wet from the damp night air. I had chills. My knees were shaking. You kind of look sick, Emily said. She glanced over my shoulder. Did you see anything? No, I told her. Nothing. It's so dark in the back, even with the full moon. What's going on in here? A stern voice interrupted us. Dad lumbered into the kitchen, adjusting the collar of the long nightshirt he always wore. It's past midnight. He glanced from Emily to me, then back to Emily, looking for a clue. We heard noises, Emily said, howls outside. And then suddenly something was scratching at the door, I added. trying to keep my knees from shaking. Fever dreams, Dad said to me. Look at you. You're red as tomato, and you're shaking. Let's take your temperature. You must be burning up. He started toward the bathroom to get the thermometer. It wasn't a dream, Emily called after him. I heard the noises, too. Dad stopped in the doorway. Did you check the deer? Yeah, they're okay, I said. Then maybe it was just the wind or some creatures in the swamp. It's hard to sleep in a new house. The sounds are all so new and so unfamiliar, but you'll get used to them after a while. I'll never get used to these horrible howls, I thought stubbornly, and then I headed back to my room. Dad took my temperature. It was slightly above normal. You should be fine by tomorrow, he said, smoothing my blanket over me. No more wandering around tonight, okay? I murmured a reply and almost instantly drifted into a restless sleep. Again, I had strange, troubling dreams. I dreamed I was walking in the swamp. I heard howls. I could see the full moon between the slender tree trunks of the swamp. I started to run, and then suddenly I was up to my waist in a thick green bog, and the howls continued one after another, echoing through the trees as I sank into the murky bog. When I awoke the next morning, the dream lingered in my mind. I wondered if the howls were real or just part of my dream. Climbing out of bed, I realized I felt fine. Yellow morning sunlight poured through the window. I could see a clear blue sky. The beautiful morning made me forget my nightmares. I wondered if Will was around this morning. Maybe he and I could go exploring in the swamp. I got dressed quickly, pulling on the pale blue jeans and a black and silver Raiders t-shirt. I am not a Raiders fan. I just like the colors. I gulped down a bowl of Frosted Flakes, allowed my mom to feel my head to make sure my fever was gone, and hurried to the back door. Whoa, hold on, Mom called, setting down her coffee cup. Where are you going so early? I wanted to see if Will was home, I said. Maybe we'll hang out or something. Okay, just don't overdo it, she warned. Promise? Yeah, promise, I replied. I pulled open the kitchen door, stepped out into the blinding sunlight, and screamed as an enormous dark monster leaped onto my chest and heaved me to the ground. And that is the end of chapter 11.